Hey friends, this is Nick. I call my channel DZ Performance. I appreciate you tuning in. It's a super cold, -7 winter day here in the Midwest, and I thought I'd give you a tour of the inventory of motors I've got right now. I buy these on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, garage sales, wherever I find them for sale, rebuild them, and I sell off occasionally, but I test and have camshafts designed for me and my motor builds. But anyway, I thought I'd just walk you through and tell you about what I got right now. Some of this stuff's for sale and some of it will be for sale soon, but these are all 781 heads that are, fresh valves, guides, valve jobs. I say they're all 781s, but there's 3 sets of 781s and 1 set of 290 casting 1969 semi-closed chambered heads there. They're just waiting to be ported. I haven't got to them yet. The first motor I've got is the 408 big block Chevy. It's a 1967 short block with a forged steel crank. It has 1969 heads. I recently did a video series with that motor against a stock rebuilt 406 small block. The 406 I'll get to in a minute. It has my double humps on it, and I'm going to rerun it. I recently had those double humps flowed by Eric Weingartner Racing. He did some videos on my double humps that I ported. That is a 2-bolt main 383. That motor's not for sale. That's one of my personal motors. It's got a bootlegger 232 at 50 thousandths. It's about 14 degrees split on the exhaust. Those are Dart Sportsmans on that motor. It's like a 9.6 motor. I've got some videos on my channel with that one running. It made 472 horse and 488 foot-pounds of torque. It's a hydraulic roller bootlegger. That one is sold. That's for a friend of mine. It made right at 500 horse. It's got an Extreme Energy 236. It's a 383 10.2 compression with Brodex IK 200s. Nice little street motor going in a good friend of mine's S10. That short block right there, it is for sale now. I would sell it. It's I bought the block new 3 years ago from Summit. It's bored 70 over. It's got Keith Black pistons. The crankshaft is a stock cast crank. The rods have ARP bolts and been floated for floating pins, but they're factory rods. That motor, it has an Extreme Energy 242, 248 hydraulic roller. Last time it ran, it did 640 something and 600 foot-pounds of torque with airflow research. My airflow research 265s I test on. This motor is not for sale, won't be for sale. That's my 505 splayed bore mains. I've had that motor 28 years. I took it out of a 1976 3/4 ton truck and put in an old worn out 350 and sold the truck for, I bought it for 800 bucks and sold it for 800 bucks. That's back when big block Chevys were super hard to get. But that was in approximately the year 1996 that I did that project. I got that big block. I've run many races in my Camaro. That motor has been as fast in my Camaro as a 980. But it's a 505 Chevy. I've got some dyno tests I'm going to share with you, maybe release a video on it later today. That is a 468 with airflow research with a tiny Extreme Energy cam, 224 at 50 intake, 230 on the exhaust. That is a very good friend of mine. That's going in a 71 Camaro this spring. It's sold. It's not available. That's a motor I would sell right now. That is a 496 with an Extreme Energy 248, 254 cam. It has that is my 990 heads, rectangle port. It's 9.8 compression. The made 594 horsepower and 590 foot-pounds of torque. I was cheating. I had to read it on the valve cover. I couldn't remember the torque. That motor is a 496. It has 88 heads on it, and it's a 9 point. That is a 10-to-1 motor. It's right at 10-to-1. That's kind of a shootout that I was doing. I can show you the sheets on it. That was before I started making YouTube videos. The differences in between the 990s and the 088s, they make almost the same horsepower. So I didn't really discover anything real big there. But the only reason this one made a few more horsepower is I tested it with a Victor Jr., where this one was tested with a RPM dual plane manifold. I ran those about a year and a half ago. Like I say, I wasn't making YouTube videos at that time when there's one of them on my YouTube channel and one of them is not. That is my Stroker 396. It's got a 454 crank in it, and it's a 436 cubic inch, actual cubic inch. Some of the machine guys that I know call them long stroke 427s. The cubic inches work out the same as a 427 if it's a standard bore, but it's just a long stroke versus the 427's a big bore short stroke. That has one of my custom cams in it that's 239 duration on the intake, and that motor is a 10.8. It's pretty good on the compression. The heads are 290 casting numbers. They have big valves in them. They got a 219 intake and 188 exhaust. The heads I got with the 396 8 years ago when I bought a car. I bought a 68 Camaro and it was in there, and the heads were very well done. I had several comments on my channel, why would you ever build a 396? Well, I got a 396 that had really good parts. It had heads that was very well done. It had all the sheet metal. It had Magnum rockers. It had just had a lot of stuff that I could use. So ended up with a 436 that makes 50 foot-pounds of torque. I did that with an Edelbrock RPM. I put a Victor Jr. on it because I'm planning on putting it in my Nova someday soon. My Nova has 456 gears, and I think it would appreciate that single plane intake. I'm going through these kind of fast, but I'm just giving you a tour of my inventory. That 436, if I sell it before I put it in my car, that one would currently be for sale right now. That is my 357. Brent McCoy, my co-pilot for Drag Week, he put that in his 55 Chevy. We call it the Barnyard 55. I did a video on it that was really popular, but I loaned him one of my 383s and that's currently in his Barnyard 55 right now. But that 357 cubic inch motor, it ran 1260s just on the motor, and then spraying it runs somewhere in the high 11s, spraying it with a 100 shot. That is a 4-bolt main, forged pistons, ARP rod bolts. That's a pretty neat little motor. For what it is, it idles smooth. It's really a nice, and the heads on it are IK 180s, and it has comp cam, high energy aluminum roller rockers. I would sell that motor. It's not really actively for sale, but that's one that I would put up for sale. This is what I call my Magic 468. Now, I know that that's kind of cocky, but that motor has been a really good one. I've got one of my custom cams in it. It's 239 at the 50 thousandths on the intake. That's all the numbers I'm telling you. That last time I ran it, let me refresh my memory. Last time I ran it, it did 654 horsepower and 628 foot-pounds of torque. Now that is it's about a 10.5 to 1 pump gas motor, a 468. I've ran it also with Brodex. The Brodex rectangle ports did 620 horse. The Brodex ovals did 619 horse. I did do a video on all that, on kind of the comparisons. I got 2 videos on my YouTube channel, but it's got JE's pistons. It's a stock crank, polished. I believe it's 10 rods, 10 mains turned down, 2. The rods are factory rods floated with ARP bolts, like I said. That's a real nice motor. I do not want to sell that one. That's one I'm going to continue to test and have fun with. Okay, well, going down the list of stuff I have. Now, I usually keep these motors covered up with plastic, but I took it off to show them off on my inventory here. That is a new block that's never been run from Summit, bought from Summit. It's a GM Performance Parts Gen 6 block. Those are JE's pistons. It was bored 30 over, so it's a 461. The crank is just a cast stock crank that's polished. I believe it's standard. The rods are ARP rod bolts, floated rods, so that I could use float the pins on those pistons. That motor's never been run. It's a 461. This is another 461. Those are 30cc dome pistons. It's a 461 cast rods and crank, but of course it'll have ARP rod bolts. I don't ever trust the factory rod bolts over 500 horse on a big block Chevy myself. That is another 461 with 10cc dome pistons. They're Hyper Eutectics, the same model as these pistons. That motor's never been run. It's in the process. This motor is one I've had for 15 years, and it just sat in the corner of the shop, and I just recently got it bored and worked on. Line honed, I did everything, decked it. This is a 1967 Small Journal 327 that I know came out of a 67 Vet. It was probably a 300 horse, but what I did is I didn't have a crankshaft for it, so I had a 350 Chevy crankshaft turned down to small journals. So it's really a 355, but it's going to look like a 327. I've got double hump heads for it, 461 castings. I'm going to put the filler neck for the oil out the intake. It's going to be a cute little motor, really neat. I'm planning on getting it a small hydraulic roller in it. I actually got a thumper, the 227 at 50 thousandths. I got a little thumper hydraulic roller I'd like to put in it, and I'd like to see that thing make 450 horse. I got a friend that's got a Vet that would be the perfect motor for him. This is a standard bore GM Performance block. The rotating assembly is out of an HO 454, which I've run. I used to run quite a bit, testing cams and testing intakes and stuff. But the cylinder block had a nick in one of the walls that always bugged me. So I took it out and had the block board, turned it into a 496, one of the previous motors I showed you, and I bought a brand new block for it. And I've just never run the block. The rotating assembly's been run before. One of the notable times it was ran, I ran this with my 454 HO with Airflow Research 265s. One of the 265s that I have in inventory right now that I use, you see me use in my testing. Also, we ran those 265s down there in Oklahoma with Eric Weingartner Racing when I went down and did some testing with him. I brought those heads with me. But I know I'm going fast, but I'm throwing a lot of information at you. If it makes you dizzy, I apologize. But that short block with a GM Performance cam, the 502 cam that's like 224 at 50 thousandths on the intake. The little GM Performance parts cam, it was only 9.3 to 1 compression, and it did 578 horsepower. I was really surprised with low compression, and it peaked somewhere around 5,900 RPMs. The next motor I got is a standard bore. This is another motorhome 454, not the one that I currently have on the engine startup stand. I'll show you that in a minute. This was a motorhome 454. I had the block decked. I honed the block and just had it hot tank cleaned. I put new cam bearings, freeze plugs in it, and I haven't run the motor yet, but on the rotating assembly, I put new rod bolts in it. I believe those rods are floated also, and I put ARP rod bolts in it. I balanced rotating assembly. I haven't got to run that one yet. That's a true standard bore 454. This is a fun one right here. I have built these motors before, and they sell well. People, when I'm done testing on this motor, it will move. What it is a mid-70s 454 block. This board's 70 over, and then it's got a 396 crank in it. So it is a 427, but 40 over, it is an actual 440 cubic inches. It's a 327 based type motor, but it's a 440 cubic inch. I've built these before. I did a video on one that I sold 9-10 months ago, and with a bootlegger 240 duration hydraulic roller cam, it at low compression, that motor only had 9.3. It did 542 horsepower with 781 heads that I ported. They weren't, well ported. They were just a minor amount of work done on them. Oh, I've got an inventory of heads. Those heads right there are all finished. There's a 781 set there that is ported, finished. The springs are Comp Cam 929s, and then that's a set of 049s that have 933 springs in them. They're a little more aggressive cam, more seat pressure. I think the seat pressure is up around 171. And then I've got some of my Brodex and airflow research stuff that I test on. Heads that are in line to get rebuilt and then ported by myself. Or take them to my machine shop and have guides and seats and the work done to them. Okay, I'll go out in the shop and I'll show you the rest of my stuff. Okay, the next up on my inventory tour. This is my 406. As I mentioned and told many times on the last couple of videos, I bought this motor for $800 and it was supposedly rebuilt. I tore into it and it was true. It was 30 over, cast pistons. It was just a factory rebuild. And I've done some dyno testing on this recently. I put in a used hydraulic, and used is better on the hydraulic flat tappets, because if it isn't flat, it got broke in without going flat. It's a extreme energy 224 at the intake, 230 on the exhaust, measured at 50 thousandths, hydraulic flat tappet. This motor now with these double hump 186 heads that have 64 cc combustion chambers, the compression should be right at 9.5. So I'm going to rerun this not next week, the week after that. Like I mentioned, it's so cold here in the Midwest. The dyno shop doesn't want to unload a couple motors when it's negative. It's actually a -7 today, so that one's going to be a fun test. It made 335 with 2-barrel heads. Well, actually, the 2-barrel heads are right here. Now, those little baby ports made 335. It did choke the motor. It didn't make great horsepower, but I I was really wanted to dyno test on them because I've never done anything goofy like that, to where I took some heads that were that bad, you know, to the dyno shop to see what it'd do. Okay, I got more motors. Hang tight. Okay, the next up, and I actually have a test coming for this one, so it's not for sale yet. It'll be for sale in probably the fall next year. This is a 406 standard 400 block. It is a 509 block, so it's a 2-bolt web foot block. I got ARP studs in the mains. The pistons I have are dished 12.5 cc hyper eutectics. They're setting 14 in the hole. I have had the block decked, but I've got some ideas. I want to do some cylinder head testing. Me and Eric has talked or flirted with the idea of doing a complete set of the GM heads, like all the double humps, all the smog heads, and doing a shootout. That I was going to take 2 406s when we do that, and that would be one of them, because I want to equal out the compression ratio in between the 76 cc heads and the small combustion chamber heads. Then I got a set of 461 castings. Those have been flow tested. Those were on Weingartner Racing's channel also. He did 9 months ago, he did flow testing on those and did a review on my port work. Okay, I got a couple more. Hang tight. Okay, what I got here is a 1971. The casting number on the block is that 010 block, so you know it's sought after because it's got the good high nickel material in it. But it is a 4-bolt main. It's a 1971 C10 motor, and this one was one of the motors that I'm doing that's a no machine shop type deal. Buy it off of Facebook Marketplace, hone it, cam bearings, freeze plugs, range bearings, you know, polish the crank by hand in the shop and put it back together. That's what I bought this motor for. The motor is actually way loose. I even put 1/1000 oversized bearings in it, trying to tighten it up a little bit, but I'm going to run thick oil in that thing and do some testing just to show no machine shop stuff. My 406 small block and my 396 was the same way, but those motors was kind of cheating because they had been rebuilt. I just got lucky, and the previous owners was telling me the truth about some of the work that was done on them. Okay, one more. Okay, I lied. I got 3 more. This is my 496. It's a 4-bolt main, approximately an early 80s block. It has a Eagle forged steel crank, scat rods, Maul power pack pistons. They are 18 cc domes. This is what my friend down in Oklahoma, Eric, that I sometimes dyno test with, he calls it the Dyno Mule 496. So if you've ever seen it on his channel, that's the motor right there. Currently, I just don't have any heads on it. I've been making changes and using the heads on other stuff. That is a 461. That's just it is 0 decked, and it has 30 cc hyper eutectic pistons in it. Okay, last motor. That was 90% of my inventory. This is my recent, I just recently did a video on it too. It is my motorhome 454. I bought it, the farmer that I bought it from told me that it came out of a RV that he bought in town. The previous owner had recently passed away. He said it had 30,000 miles on it. I planned on buying a 454 that I could show you guys just bolt-on projects and, you know, report to you and show you what kind of horsepower gains. I haven't taken it to the dyno shop yet. I'm preparing to do that next week. It's just changed the intake and rockers. But the story about the motor, they were lying, they were wrong. The motor was almost brand new. They had just put a new crate motor in that RV. I lucked out on this one. I wanted to show a real world, you could buy an RV motor and do these things to it. Not very often are you going to find one that has just been a crate motor put in the RV and it taken out. The inside of this motor is just way too clean to have any miles on it. There's no wear. There's no wear on this motor. So, but we are going to have some fun doing some projects, taking it to the dyno and see what kind of results we get from minor changes. I may change cylinder heads in the next video after, next test after this one we got coming up. But if you stayed this long, I was going to show you what it sounds like. Thanks for watching. This is Nick.